Okay, now let's talk a little bit about evidence. What kind of hard evidence is there about this planet? We know, I know there's stuff out there that points to there being another planet in the solar system. There are all kinds of different things, but in your opinion, what is the hard evidence on this planet and the damage that it will cause when it comes? I know that it's mentioned in Revelations in some sort, but what else as far as evidence goes?
I actually put together a group of 10 evidences for the existence of Planet X in my book. The most powerful one, I believe, is actually the existence, or the outer planets Uranus and Neptune, the state they're in. When the Voyager probes passed by the outer planets, they discovered not orderly planets, with rotational axes that are perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic, ring systems that are perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic, and moons that all orbit in the same kind of regular pattern, same direction, and everything. What they found was a disaster area. Both Uranus and Neptune had been significantly affected, they deduced, by a near flyby of a planet-sized object roughly 3 to 5 times the mass of Earth. They did this not by just conjecture. They ran the math to determine how could these planets be so screwed up. For example, Uranus is actually rotating on its side, almost exactly 90 degrees opposite, different from the other planets. It's like 180 degrees. It's like 85 degrees off where it should be from a perpendicular, for example, Venus and Mercury. It's literally outside, and it has a ring system that must have formed after a cataclysm, because the ring system is also rotating around its equator. If it had been formed that way, it would not have been able to form if Uranus had originally formed on its side. So and also the moons of Uranus are all kind of screwed up. And the whole situation is totally indicative of a conflict with another planet-sized body. And they determined through the mathematics that these things could have been caused by a near flyby of a body 3 to 5 times the mass of Earth. Same thing with Neptune. Neptune is also heavily skewed. Its rotational and magnetic axes are also almost perpendicular with each other. It shouldn't be that way. They should be parallel with each other, or pretty close. Also, it has moons which have strange orbits. One of them, Nereid, has an extremely elongated orbit. One of the moons, I think Triton, actually rotates backwards from the other moons, which doesn't make any sense. And also, we've learned this more recently, Neptune and the planet Pluto actually have orbits which intersect occasionally. Pluto is actually almost identical in size and composition to Neptune's other moon, Triton, to the point that scientists now generally agree that Pluto is actually not an original member of our solar system, but an escaped satellite that escaped the orbit of Neptune due to some similar cataclysm that hit the planet Uranus. So once again, Planet X was invoked to explain why the planet Neptune was so screwed up, and why the planet Pluto exists, even though it's only about the size of a satellite, and it intersects with the orbit of Neptune, indicating almost certainly that it was once a satellite of Neptune. So the characteristics of the outer planets are, in my mind, and in the mind of the scientific community, definitive evidence for the existence of a Planet X, because nothing else could explain how these events could have happened. It is therefore 100% likely that Planet X, at least at one time, existed in our solar system. The question is not does it exist, but where is it? So that
yeah, that is the big question. Where is it?
Yeah,
I
and there's plenty of other
evidence,
but those are the biggest ones.
Right. And I've told my listeners throughout the last couple of years, I'd say probably 5 years ago, I was one of those people who was thinking, hey, there's a lot going on this planet right now with earthquakes and weather patterns, and I thought, yeah, this thing's got to be out there, and maybe close. And now I'm more along the lines of, yes, it's out there. When will it get us? Will it get us? I don't know. There's evidence for it, and then there's, arguments against it as far as where it is, when it's going to come. I know that it exists. I know Planet X is a real deal because I've seen an article on it back in 1983. when I was in high school. I've seen an article that said that a satellite had captured this thing, had caught it, and they found it. So I remember reading about it. So
that was the IRAS
interesting
satellite.
stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And so I do know it exists. That much I do know.
Okay. Yeah, there's plenty of other evidence for it, but that's the primary evidence, and it's definitive in and of itself. So I felt that was more than enough to base a theory on. And
right.
There are actually professional astronomers out there who are searching for it right now. So it's not like it's just all Sitchin-esque pseudoscience. There's real science behind it, and that's the main reason I decided to pursue it.
I see. Well, it's very interesting, and and let's talk for a couple minutes about what is happening on this planet right now. We have had a tremendous increase in earthquakes, and some will say, "Oh no, it's just there's more news outlets now, so you hear about it more, and there's more technology." But no, it's definitely increased. The storms have increased. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on. We've had asteroids come nearby and comets, and we've been told that planets in our solar system are actually undergoing warming. So you got to wonder what's going on and what's causing all this, and if this thing we call Planet X, if it's not maybe nearby and somehow affecting these other planets.
Well, if Planet X were approaching, it would probably cause disruptions in the magnetic signature of the solar system as it passes through, and that could cause issues with solar flares, and the increased activity of solar activity could create an increase in the heat, the warmth of the other planets if there's additional solar activity going on. So that makes perfect sense. Also, the magnetic spheres of the planets might be affected as well, causing anomalies and data gathered from them. Who knows what's actually going on? But the existence of an approaching planet approaching the inner solar system would have an effect. It wouldn't be dramatic, but it would be there and measurable.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to take our last break, Doug, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more and finish up. And we'll take calls 858-683-1309. You've got to press 1, so I know you want to come on the air. I'm Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands. My guest, Doug Elwell. We'll be right back. Is it possible to read a person's thoughts? Can we implant thoughts also? Is there evidence of the existence of God? Does U.S. got red rain falling down on you? It could be from the chemtrails being spread in the air. I don't know. Just a suggestion as to what it may be, because I don't think Planet X is here yet. You know, I think if this is real, and if this does happen, and if it got semi-close to us, I think it would definitely affect the tides. I think that we'd see much ocean activity. And, you know, so for those who say, oh, it's right there, you know, you can only see it if you're in the southern hemisphere, and, you know, it's huge. They put up these pictures like it's big as the moon up there. And I know that's not so, because if it was, we'd be hearing about coastal areas getting swamped, and I haven't heard much about that. You know, that's why, I mean, you got to divide the junk from the truth, and that's what we try to do here. You know, it's tough. People will say, oh, go to YouTube or go look at this. Well, that's fine, but I didn't see them take the picture, and I didn't see them record it, so, you know, I can only take it with a grain of salt. And I've seen one video, somebody tried to sell that. I just think it looked like Jupiter was upon us. And right away, it's like, there's no way that's real, because if it was, wow, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I'd be floating in the ocean somewhere. Anyways, 858-683-1309, that's the number. Just press 1 so we know you want to get on. We're going to get back to it. Make sure you get over to LateNightInTheMidlands.com, become a member, and be informed. And please inform others. We really need to reach out to our friends and our neighbors and strangers and let them know what's really going on. And make sure you get over to project.nsearch.com as well, and the social network nsearch.com. And we're going to bring Doug back with us. All right, Doug, I know we kind of elaborated on this just a little bit earlier, but in your own opinion, how much do you think the government knows about this? Because they got the underground bases, they've got the tons of food that they've got in storage, the seed bank. It's almost like they're expecting something to come.
Yeah, if Planet X does exist and it's approaching, then you can expect them to start building underground tunnels, underground bases, storing massive amounts of food, not necessarily against a war, but against something coming from heaven. And there's the old statement from Ronald Reagan saying, what if a force came from heaven to attack Earth? We would certainly unite to forget our problems and unite to fight against the common enemy. I think we've been systematically, over the last several decades, conditioned to think of space invasion possibly coming and to unite against the space invasion in order to fight against it. Okay, once again, it gets back to the idea of a fight against war against heaven. And so I think part of this preparation is a propagandization of the population of the Earth to think in terms of oneness and unity towards more of a socialist and communist tendency, possibly why the powers that be put our current president into position in order to kind of promote that concept of unity and nobody's better than anybody else, towards the inevitable goal of communizing and eventually enslaving the population in order to make sure that they're willing and able to fight against this second coming as a kind of a controlled army backed up by a controlled supply line and docile worker force. Ultimately, the desire of the fallen angels is to enslave mankind and make them into just that thing, a compliant and easily controlled workforce in order to help them gain their objective of attacking heaven and at the least maintaining the existing stalemate so that their powers and freedoms will be maintained indefinitely.
Oh, yeah. The people of this great planet have been lied to so bad it's not funny. They put this two-party system in here in the United States, and they want everyone to think that they've got a choice. They want people to feel like they're in control. And the fact of the matter is, we're all being lied to like there's no tomorrow. And they would love to make us all an evil army of their empire. Absolutely. The problem is, though, I don't think God ever loses.
No, it's not possible. But I do think he's capable.
So.
They are strong enough to achieve a stalemate condition, which is why the power of evil has been maintained as long as they have. It's not as much a stalemate as a slowdown of God's reinforcement of his sovereignty. So in that sense, one could consider time and space to be a means of the fallen angels maintaining that appearance of independence. And I'm going to explore that concept in my next book, Giants in the Earth, that the time and space themselves were actually created by Satan in order as a means to create the illusion of self-control and self-will. But it's only a temporary anomaly in which God has to overcome this illusion of time and space and reinforce his will. But in the meantime, there's, with the appearance of God's lack of control, it is actually illusory in nature, because it's not possible for God to not be in control based on his omnipotence and omniscience. So in order for that to be maintained, the universe, you can either have a situation where God is not omnipotent, or the universe is an illusion. It's not real in the sense of God is real. The universe is not real in a true sense, and only in its relative, temporary, and self-referential concept. It exists only in the mind of Satan in that sense.
Well, the evil at will here is now working, and what I understand, very close to finding what's called the God particle in the human brain. And can you imagine what they can do if they could turn off any concept we have of God? I mean, wow.
It would be interesting, but I think that that fundamental level is still controlled by God. It's only the higher levels, the more baser, cruder aspects of the material universe are being governed by Satan, or at least influenced by him. So he has.
Well, yeah, these evil. these evil SOBs who are in control, they really think they're God. They think they can create at will and kill at will, and they get to choose who lives and dies. I mean, look at the wars. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
That was the desire of the fallen angels to have control and to have dominion over others, and why they were thrown out of heaven. That desire is evil, and it causes only descent. So, in order to cast dissension out of heaven, God had to cast them out of heaven. But they're going to still maintain that evil pattern down here on earth. So you can expect more of the same until God comes down and forces his will also on earth, as it is in heaven.
Well, maybe that's why we got the moon so close to us. Maybe we're supposed to kick them off and send them there. I don't know. It's getting bad, though. It really is. I mean, I'm not going to say I see World War III coming, but I see World War III coming if something doesn't happen soon, and this warmongering isn't stopped. I mean, we start with Iran. I think that's going to draw in Russia, China. I mean, we could be talking about annihilation here with a World War III. I think they say World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones, and that's about what it amounts to.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen, but it may inevitably happen. It is prophecy to happen, so it's good to be prepared for that inevitability.
Now, pretty close to last but not least, where might we be able to find or maybe see Planet X? What direction of the sky would somebody be able to look at? Where should we look? Where do you think it should be coming from?
I believe, based on what I believe to be encoded messages in Genesis 1:1, and also Revelation, I think it's Revelation 2, that Planet X will appear in or near the head of Taurus when it first appears. That is because there's two reasons. One, the first word of the Bible, Bereshit, the individual letters of Hebrew actually have meaning, not just the words. And so when you break down the word Bereshit, which Bereshit, by the way, literally means in the head, or in the beginning, but also it basically means in the head. You break down those letters, they spell out the following sentence. Beth means house, Resh means head, Shin means horns, Yod means hand, and Tav means cross. What this means literally is in the head of the house. Actually, Aleph means bull too, because it's the horns of the bull. So it literally means the word Bereshit when you break it down to its individual letters. In the house of the head of the bull, in the horns, will appear the hand of God in the form of a cross, because in ancient Paleo Hebrew, the Tav, the last letter of the alphabet, it was actually a cross sign. So I believe what they encoded in there, in the beginning, literally, which means in the head, is that the Planet X appeared in the constellation of Taurus in the horns. And I don't know how much more time we have. There's a description of Jesus appearing amidst the seven churches, which are also seven stars in the book of Revelation. I believe it's chapter 2 or 1 or 2 or both. And the seven churches of Ephesus are actually located in the southwest corner of Asia Minor, which is modern Turkey. And in ancient times, the subcontinent of Asia Minor was associated with the constellation of Taurus. And in the constellation of Taurus, if you map it over Turkey, the face of the Taurus actually is located where these seven churches are. So I believe what Jesus meant by these seven churches being seven stars is that it corresponds with the asterism in the face of the bull called the Hyades. And there's 5 stars in this asterism, which is a subconstellation, and 2 stars indicating the horns. So I think, and when Jesus appeared in the midst of these 7 stars, I believe he's saying that Planet X will reappear in the midst of these 7 stars in the head of the bull Taurus, a repetition of the prophecy encoded in Genesis 1:1, the first word, Bereshit, repeated in the book of Revelation, saying, just as I appeared in the beginning in the horns of the bull Taurus in heaven, so I will reappear in the horns of the bull Taurus in the end times. In the beginning, in the end, there's a repetition, there's a cycle, a beginning of things and an end of things. Jesus will wrap up the entire creation process and return the same way he came initially to create the earth. He will come back to recreate it.
And what do you think happens after it gets recreated? Does it stay honest and level, or does it go back corrupt again, you think, and another Noah event comes about?
When Jesus returns, there will be 1,000 years of peace, perfect peace, at the end of which the dragon will be re-released. And then it describes what is called a great white throne in heaven. And it says, heaven and earth flee from before it, and there's no place found for them. And it also mentions that all these people will be thrown into a lake of fire, and the earth will be burnt up. Earlier in the New Testament, it describes that the earth and all the works in it will be burnt up in an everlasting fire. What I believe altogether this is saying is that Planet X will return again after 1,000 years instead of 2,000 years, its orbital period having been cut in half. And it will, in a brief but furious struggle, throw Earth and everyone on it into the sun. And that is what the lake of fire is. It's actually describing the sun, which is a burning fire which will last for billions more years. And if God wants it to last longer, it will last forever. So this eternal burning fire is Earth and all of the inhabitants in it, and all those who love to lie. Every one of them will be thrown into the sun, where they will burn forever. And the Planet X will replace Earth in its orbit and become that perfect planet you're describing.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. Now, we've got about another 10 minutes to go. Can you tell me a little bit about the cylinder seal?
The one with the Sumerian cylinder seal, with what appears to be a central sun surrounded by 10 planets?
Yeah, you were talking about it a little earlier. Tell me a little more about that. I mean, what is that? Give me a little history on it.
Sitchin actually found that cylinder seal. It was a Sumerian cylinder seal depicting, I believe, the deities Anu and Enlil and/or possibly Enki. And in it, it's basically a convocation of the gods in heaven. And in this cylinder seal, there appears to be what looks like a depiction of the sun surrounded by 10 circles. And these 10 circles correspond perfectly with the planets as we understand them today, including an additional 10th planet, which is about the same size as Planet X would be according to the theories. So I believe that this convocation of the gods in heaven is actually a description of the convocation of the planets in heaven. On the cylinder seal, it's actually they're depicted in an anthropomorphic way, as human-like, but it's actually a description of the congregation of the gods in heaven, the planets, and probably it's depicting this cylinder seal is probably depicting a conjunction of planets in the heavens, where a number of them are gathered into one place, which, by the way, happened around during the 20th century BC, between 1900 and 2000 BC, which I believe was actually used as a description in Job 1 and 2, where it is said that and also in the Babylonian creation, I think, both of which are prefaced by a gathering of divine beings in heaven. I believe what they're actually describing is two different groupings or massings of the planets in heaven, both of which occurred, I think, about 30 years apart during the 20th century BC. And this immediately preceded the return of Planet X. And the consummate destruction that happened afterwards. Planet X, I believe, actually hurled one or more asteroids towards Earth as it passed through the asteroid belt. And this describes the destruction not only of the Empire of Sumer, which was destroyed at that time, according to their own documents, by an asteroid, which sounds like an asteroid which fell from heaven, and also the book of Job, in which a similar event happened. Fire fell from heaven, and all Job's cattle were destroyed, his children were destroyed by this fire from the wilderness, this wind from the wilderness. And I believe what happened was, right before this conjunction of planets in the heaven, which is used in both the New English and the book of Job to date this event, so sometime during the 20th century BC, one or more asteroids fell from the earth and destroyed the empire of Sumer, and also Job, who lived in the suburbs of Sumer. Job was described as one of the chief of the East, chief men of the East, which at that time would have been Sumer. And this is a description of the destruction of Sumer and all the suburbs surrounding it, described in the book of Job. And I believe this is what actually happened. And I talk about this in my chapter 6 of my book, Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man in the End of the Age. How the book of Job was kind of was a memory of the ancient creation of the earth that had been encoded into the book of Job in such a way that those who understood such things at the end of time would unlock the code and explain what was actually meant here.
Amazing. Well, we're getting down on time here, so I want to give you a few minutes to go ahead and anything you'd like to finish with, by all means, go ahead. Got about another 5 minutes left. So anything you'd like to, any direction you'd like to head, please go right ahead.
Let me reiterate the names of the books and how to get them first, and we can wrap up and summarize them. The first book, Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man in the End of the Age, is about how God used a planet, which he specifically guided into our solar system, which formed according to natural processes that he set into motion in the beginning when he created the universe. He then took a planet and aimed it towards the fourth planet in our solar system. At that time, struck it, divided it into two pieces. One became the asteroid belt, the other became Earth, as we understand it today. Moved to a position closer to the sun, where it would be warmer. He gave it an axial tilt as a result of this impact, which created the seasons, without which we could have no life on Earth. This giant impact also created the moon, as we understand it today, also which is required for life on Earth. Basically, this single impact event created all the characteristics of Earth: its distance from the sun, its axial tilt, its rotation rate, and its moon, and also the creation of the oceans, all of which are necessary for life on Earth to exist. And this is what happened in the beginning. He divided this primordial planet into two pieces, creating heaven and earth from it, and in that process modifying Earth to such an extent that it would be able to support life as we know it. And this planet returns every 2,000 years, will have its orbit modified sufficiently so it'll pass near Earth in the end times and cause the cataclysms caused in the Book of Revelation, and basically reappear in heaven, not only where it appeared 2,000 years ago as the Star of Bethlehem. It will also reappear in the end times as the sign of the Son of Man in the end of the age, described in Matthew 24. So Planet X defines both the creation, nativity, and end times of the Bible as the primary symbol and means a tool that God will use to achieve his goals. My other book, The Riddle of the Sphinx, which is available exclusively in Amazon.com Kindle format, it talks about how the Sphinx hides a mysterious hall of records underneath it, which can be accessible via the right paw. This is described not only in occult literature, but also in the Bible, both of which have a vested interest in the biblical narrative has a vested interest in keeping it hidden, but the occult literature wants to find it so that their great leader, the Antichrist, will be able to use it to conquer and control the world. And this ancient secret hidden in this hall of records beneath the Sphinx is an artifact of ancient technology from the world before the flood, which was so dangerous that it had to be hidden so that no one could use it again until the time appointed at the end of the age, when the descendant of the one who once wore it before in the world before the flood will wear it once again in order to raise an army and control it in order to fight against the second coming of Christ. So there is actually a link there between Planet X and the Riddle of the Sphinx. Both have to do with an end-time battle between the forces of good and evil. And of course, the forces of good will of course win. But reading both these books, you'll have a much better understanding of what will happen in the end times and how to prepare for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, amazing information, absolutely. And people can go to your website and get more information and get their hands on the books as well?
Yes, you can learn more about the Riddle of the Sphinx at www.mysteriousworld.com/riddle. And you can learn more about Planet X, the sign of the Son of Man, and the end of the age at planet-x.info. That's planet-x.info.
Okay, well, Doug, I thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a very interesting evening, to say the least. And when you get going with your Giants book, I'd love to have you back.
I'll put you on my list, mailing list, so you know first thing when it comes out.
Well, thank you so much. And once again, thank you very much, Doug. And we've got you linked up over on LateNightInTheMidlands.com, and we'll keep your links there so people can find you. And looking forward to the next time we chat, my friend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to the first hour of Late Night in the Midlands. To finish listening to this episode, go to lnmradionetwork.com and become a subscriber. Becoming a subscriber is easy. There is a link on every page to take you to the subscription page. The cost is low, and you would be supporting Late Night in the Midlands and all of our efforts to bring you the truth. Again, go to lnmradionetwork.com, click on the subscribe button, and you can finish listening to this episode as well as all of the other shows that are in our archives.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about evidence. What kind of hard evidence is there about this planet? We know, I know there's stuff out there that points to there being another planet in the solar system. There are all kinds of different things, but in your opinion, what is the hard evidence on this planet and the damage that it will cause?
They're different from the other planets. It's like 180 degrees. It's like 85 degrees off where it should be from a perpendicular, for example, Venus and Mercury. It's literally outside, and it has a ring system that must have formed after a cataclysm, because the ring system is also rotating around its equator. If it had been formed that way, it would not have been able to form if Uranus had originally formed on its side. So this. And also the moons of Uranus are all kind of screwed up. And the whole situation is totally indicative of a conflict with another planet-sized body. And they determined through the mathematics that these things could have been caused by a near flyby of a body 3 to 5 times the mass of Earth. Same thing with Neptune. Neptune is also heavily skewed. Its rotational and magnetic axes are also almost perpendicular with each other. It shouldn't be that way. They should be parallel with each other, or pretty close. Also, it has moons which have strange orbits. One of them, Nereid, has an extremely elongated orbit. One of the moons, I think Triton, actually rotates backward. Ring systems that are perpendicularly plane ecliptic, and moons that all orbit in the same kind of regular pattern, same direction, and everything. What they found was a disaster area. Both Uranus and Neptune had been significantly affected, they deduced, by the near flyby of a planet-sized object roughly 3 to 5 times the mass of Earth. They did this not by just conjecture. They ran the math to determine how could these planets be so screwed up. For example, Uranus is actually rotating on its side, almost exactly 90 degrees.
Cause when it comes, I know that it's mentioned in Revelations in some sort, but what else as far as evidence goes?
I actually put together a group of 10 evidences for the existence of Planet X in my book. The most powerful one, I believe, is actually the existence, or the outer planets Uranus and Neptune, the state they're in. When the Voyager probes passed by the outer planets, they discovered not orderly planets, with rotational axes that are perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic,